What's up YouTube, Dar here from Zephyr Wargames, and today, as you guys have requested, I'm bringing you a no budget hold build for Traptrix. Now, in honesty, not a lot has changed. I've basically just upgraded a couple of cards, you can see below you there, and upgraded a couple of the extra cards. That's pretty much it. The deck can still do incredibly well even without these inclusions, but I'll explain to you each one that I've added and why I've done so. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe. If you want to see more Traptrix content or just general content from us, then you make sure you hit that like button, get it above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will bring you more content like it. So for the Traptrix monsters, we start off with triple Mamelo, triple Mantis. We've already talked about how these are like your one card starters. Obviously more so Mantis than Mamelo, but they're both incredibly good. I've decided to drop the Pudica down to 2 and the Arachnacampa down to 2. Now when I'm considering this, like, you want to see the Pudica in your hand because you want it to be your first normal summon to get you the field spell and to make your plays go from there. You wanted the Arachnacampa at 3 because it was one of them ones where if you normal summon any of these and then got into the Sarah and at some point your opponent stopped the Sarah and negated the Sarah, whatever, you still had an Arachnacampa that can summon itself down and trigger the effect to set you up at least a very high level control board. Throughout testing, considering I've actually cut out the Amazing Tune and I've gone for Pot of Prosperity, it kind of was a bit of a balance of where can I find the space to adapt, what could I get rid of, what could I change, and these were kind of the ones that I went with. Arguably, you could cut the Viscilos as well, but I kind of want to keep it at 1 as another form of extender. The other one I've got is Dynea. Dynea is just so incredibly important for this deck because throughout the combo, if you open up any of your Trap Hole cards, being able to ditch them for your brand new card in the form of the Trap Hole Halatia and then be able to reset it off the back of Dynea is incredibly important and very, very powerful. Not to mention that when it comes to its effect of possibly being leaving the field, you can mantis it back to the hand and you're good to go. I've then still maintained the one Neptis. I also really have been trying to consider getting Atrax into the deck as well, but I haven't yet found the space. Like, if I wanted to put it up to 41 cards, I could very easily put it in there. But the reason that I like the Atrax is if you go and focus on the Kulia, the Link 2, the Kulalaria a lot more, because by doing so, you then recycle your Trap Hole cards, and then you have the ability of being able to Mantis, bounce them back to the hands, so you can dodge stuff like Evenly Matched and still be able to activate them during the turn, because Atrax will be on the board. Triple Parallel and Triple Ash, again, all pretty straightforward and simple on the monster lineup. Like I said, the only change is a reduction in Pudica and a reduction in Arachnacampa. And if it doesn't really work, I'll put them back up to 3s. It's just something that I wanted to trial out, and it gave me space for the bigger investment cards that you're about to see now, really. So the bigger investment cards are, of course, Pot of Prosperity alongside double, triple tack. Now, this deck can be quite aggressive once it's got going, but the issue is going first, you want to be able to activate Prosperity and dig to get the cards you need. Going second, you can activate Prosperity because it's rare that you'll probably complete an OTK. If anything, you Prosperity and you get into like a Frost or you get into an Evenly Matched, you break your opponent's board, you're good to go, and then you build up and set yours up. The reason that Frost is so good is the chance that your opponent's going to activate a monster effect in the form of something like an Ash Blossom. If you're going second, they activate a monster effect, like for example, let's say they activate Shangri-La, you go Frost, search out Evenly Matched, and you haven't activated a monster effect, so they haven't got anything they can do to kind of lock up the remainder of the zones, and then you go, cool, Evenly Matched, clear the board, you're good to go. So this basically acts as 5 copies of Evenly Matched. Going first, it can act as any of your trap cards. So it can act as an Infinite Impermanence, it can act as an Evenly Matched if you want it to, it can be another form of Floodgate Trap Hole, it can get directly to Gravediggers if you can't get into them, or search them in one way or another, and it can also get you into Terrifying. When you go into game 2 and 3, it's also incredibly good for your side deck cards of stuff like D-Barrier and everything else that you might be able to get to as well. Then the last spell we've got is the One Garden. So you can see that the Prosperities have replaced the Tune. Now, yes, the Tune is actually really good for the deck, but the fact is when you compare it to Pot of Prosperity, again, there's just no draw card quite like it. The fact that Prosperity can do stuff on its own, if you get Ashed with it, it's not the end of the world. You've got a couple of flex spots in the extra deck that I'll take you through when I get there. But yes, Tune is good to kind of banish it and then put the card that you've just banished back to the bottom of the deck. So it's going to be better in the grind game. But just being able to dig off Prosperity, the way you've got to look at this is if I don't win the dice roll, how am I going to successfully break my opponent's board? And the best way is being able to go, okay, cool. Prosperity, get me to that Evenly as quickly as I can, or Prosperity, get me to the Frost, and Frost will then get me to Evenly. So we've got 5 ways of doing it, and as you can kind of tell from the way I'm mentioning it, I am main decking the Evenly Matched as well, purely because it's just such a great blowout card, and it's one of the ones that you don't actually have the drawback. So Of course, I'm playing triple evenly matched. But the thing with this is, if you go first, it's great discard fodder to be able to activate your Holotia turn 0. Being able to main deck evenly matched is quite, like, you could arguably use Nibiru instead. And just as a quick other mention, instead of Thrust as well, another alternative you could use is Lady Labyrinth, because it will kind of do the same job. And it doesn't really rely on your opponent. It's just a little bit slower than Frost. So entirely up to you. If you don't have Frost, because I know it is the new high level chase card, you've got Lady Labyrinth as an alternative as well. But speaking of, obviously, the idea that is you want to be able to activate Holotia the turn it's set, which means you can discard a card like evenly matched, unless you've got the Dioneer combo play, and then you'll be able to pretty much discard any of your whole cards and go from there. Before I show you the other 3, I might as well show you the other whole cards. So I've gone with 2 Floodgates, 1 Gravediggers, and 1 Terrifying. It's a shame. I'm really hoping this is going to get like an OTS foil print. But this might be our branded lost for the deck, which is a bit sad. Now, I've seen a lot of builds that are playing a lot of different whole cards. It all comes down to the local environment. Now, to me personally, if I'm going to a high competitive event, something like a Floodgate is probably the best. Is the best card for anything that isn't branded or anything that isn't like fusion heavy, so ninjas. But you do this against sprites, they don't have a level 2 on the board, they're really going to struggle. You do it against Kashtiras, you lock a monster on their board and they can't constantly keep special summoning. So I would personally say Floodgate is the best one to me. Yes, you can loop it back with Dioneer, you can obviously loop it back if you were to play the tune as well. But ultimately, the only way you're looping it back with the tune is if you banish it from the graveyard or if you're activating this to banish it to do so. So minimizing the kind of like trap hole cards is worked out perfectly fine for me, because you've got designated ones for the local environment or the environment you're going to. Now, obviously, you do have so many others. You've got bottomless trap hole, you've got time space trap hole, everything like that. But you don't, when you're thinking about the Kashtira matchup, you actually don't want the monster to leave the board. And what I mean by that is floodgating your opponent's monster against that matchup is just so much more important. Yes, of course, when you want to start looking at something like your branded plays, that's when you might want to, like, Floodgate isn't as great, because they can pretty much just still fuse with that face down material. That being said, if you Floodgate a Mirror Jade, they're really not going to be able to do anything. If you Floodgate a Dust Dragon, they're kind of going to be stuck a little bit. You Floodgate a Rimbrum, they're going to be stuck a little bit. So it's not instantly that they're going to be able to out it straight away. So I still feel that Floodgate is the best card, which is why I'm playing it at 2. Because being able to activate this twice in one turn is incredibly powerful. One coming off of Rafflesia, and then one just activating itself. Then for the final track cards, of course, Imperm and Shade Brigandine. So Shade Brigandine, once it's already been activated, unless you're banishing the track cards from the graveyard, becomes just free discard fodder off of the Holotia, or of course you can activate it, but it would have to be set for an entire turn. Imperm is just Imperm. Like, it's a great hand trap, it triggers Sarah, it will get you everything you need. So yeah, like it's pretty much a must main in my opinion. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, this is where I've kind of changed up a few things, and this is where most of your increased budget will go. That being said, the great thing about the structure there is being able to get hold of free Sarah is, of course, incredibly important. I've gone with the 1 Kalaria, and I've gone with the 2 Aptus for this particular build. And the reason I've done this is because the Aptus isn't really like a hard once per turn. Like, its effect to boost all of your monsters, all of your Traptrix monsters by 1,000, gives you instant access to be able to go either link spam. So if they Ibly lock you, you go, okay, whatever, normal summon any of my monsters, any of my Traptrix monsters, do the effect, go into Sarah, start triggering off Sarah's effect. And then the best thing about the Aptus is it also requires 2+ monsters, including an insect or plant monster. So you can then use that Ibly at a certain point to get into the Aptus. Aptus will give you the ability to start popping your opponent's cards, and on top of that, there are times where, especially when you're using the Nephthys and Sarah, where you can fill your board up with so many insect monsters that you could, in theory, make 1 Aptus, fill up 3 more zones, make a second Aptus, and then straight away, both your Aptus are on 38, and your Sarah's a 2800 beat stick. Like, that's mental. And if you've been able to hold more cards back, which you will be able to do because this just gains so much resource, you can then add an XYZ on top of that. And if you're going to add like an Alamiris, that's a 3300, and then it can bring back an insect from the graveyard, which will then be boosted as well. So this can be a base of 42 if you've got the 2 Aptus, and then your Panicular can be a 45, which is absolutely mental. I've seen people playing 2 Paniculars. I personally don't think, like, the only reason you play 2 is if the cash matchups is so heavy at your locals that they're always going to target this. But I feel the first card your opponent's going to target if they are playing cash is going to be your Zeus and your access code. Like, to me, they're the first ones I would go for personally, unless I know exactly what this deck does. And there's no point in hitting a Sarah because you need to hit all 3 Sarahs for it to be completely conclusive and end it there. The one Rafflesia, if they hit your Rafflesia, that can be a little bit painful, but again, the chances are that they'll be going first to do that, and the best thing that you can get to clear their board, apart from evenly matched, is of course going to be a Zeus. So we've then of course got the one Baguska, the one Redoer. I've still kept the one Roach, and I've kept the one Link Spider, just for those really, really random times where you only have Shade Brigandine and Parallel. You still want to be able to make that combo, because that can still get you into Rafflesia and still get you into Sarah. Now, there are different variations. This is why the deck like this has a couple of flex spots. So off of your Prosperity, if you're not playing against Cashtiras, then of course you can get rid of the Roach. If you've already completed your combo, you can get rid of the Spider. You've got the ability to get rid of one of the Adpus. You can get rid of the Coolio if you're not going to go down that route. You can get rid of one Sarah if you want to as well. And then if you're not going to go fully defensive with Baguska, you can get rid of that. So you've got your different options that you can kind of pick apart and go from it as well. The one thing to mention about Access Code Talker, which is why I'm not a biggest fan of this, is the only other Link ones you're getting into the graveyard are going to be Earths. So yes, you'll be able to make it off the bat of the Octopus pretty easily and make it a 5300 attack monster, but then the reduction of the thousands from all of your other Traptrix kind of take a bit of a hit back. So again, this is another flex spot should you want to change it up to something else. You can go more Link heavy if you wanted to. You could go for a Link Garibo if you're that worried about a... if you're that worried about the Ibli. You could also go for something a little bit more conventional, and like you can bump any of these up if you wanted to. Honestly, I don't think that these ratios need to be bumped up. Like if anything, maybe a Panicular. But you also then have access to stuff like Cowboy, Exton Knight. If you wanted to as well, you could go more Labyrinth heavy, and you could play stuff like the Big Welcomes, Arianas, Lady Labyrinths, and everything like that. The issue I see with that is it does require you to open up an extender, so it'd be Ariana plus an extender, which will ultimately then get you to a Lady Labyrinth. But like I said, I've already kind of not struggled, but there was like few cards when I was trying to adapt this from the budget build that I showed you guys the other day. There was few cards I was like, okay, I want to take that card out. It's like it's bricking me a little bit, or it seems a little bit slow. Like the deck is just generally pretty decent straight out of the packet. I mean, it would have been a little bit more damaging if they went, you know what, we're just not going to print Sarah in it or print a core card in it, and you're like, okay, cool, that's Konami's way of going, okay, here's another Sunlight Wolf example where a rare or something a lot lower can be a lot higher in value. But other than that, like the deck works out really, really well. I really enjoy using this deck. I think it's a very strong deck and it's so underrated. So I feel hopefully this structure deck will kind of not like bring it more into the forefront where people are like, oh, yo, damn, Traptrix can actually compete and can actually play. I didn't know that. And then everyone that's built it and pre-prepped for it and everything else will be like, yeah, well, I knew that, and I'm doing incredibly well with it. So, anyway, I hope this gives you a couple of ideas in your own build. Like I said, the 5 new additional like spots that I've kind of played around with, putting in Frost and Prosperities, is pretty much the only main deck upgrade or the main deck injection of investment, basically. But like I said, the Frost can become a Lady Labyrinth, which is 1/5 of the price. And then the Prosperities can maintain as the tuning. The only thing is I feel that the Prosperity is a little bit more consistent and they'll help you get to your, like, either your starters, your extenders, or just your general power play cards a lot more consistently and a lot more easily. You could play Prosperity of 2 if you wanted to, because you're very rarely going to be resolving 2 of them, unless you're going to go for 3 rather than 6, but that's entirely up to you guys. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Do like, comment, subscribe, share. Like I said, if you want to see more content like this, whether it be more Traptrix content or just more content in general from the channel, make sure you smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe, because then you can follow us along on our entire journey. And any questions you have, put them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Anyway, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe. And of course, happy dueling.